This is the Quiz Fix. I'm Cyril, that's Olivia. One true story per episode, one quiz at the end, because facts you tested on are facts you keep. Here we go. If you wanted to pick one deal in American history that people love to joke about after the fact, this is it. The Alaska Purchase of 1867. The United States bought a huge stretch of land from Russia for $7.2 million. Today, that sounds like a steal. But at the time, a lot of Americans thought it was a cold, expensive mistake.
Right, and that reaction is important because it tells you how weird the deal looked in the moment. Alaska was remote, rugged, and not exactly seen as a future economic powerhouse. People called it Seward's Folly or Seward's Icebox, after Secretary of State William H. Seward, who negotiated the purchase. But if you step back, the purchase fit a bigger story about empire, strategy, and the United States looking north and west at the same time.
Let's start with Russia, because Russia was the seller for a reason. By the 1860s, Russia's grip on Alaska was thin. Russia had established a colonial foothold in the region in the late 1700s, largely through fur trading, especially sea otter pelts. But maintaining such a distant territory was difficult and expensive, and Russia had plenty of other problems closer to home.
Exactly. Russia had just come out of the Crimean War in the 1850s, which exposed how vulnerable the empire could be. Alaska was isolated from the rest of Russian America, and defending it against Britain in particular seemed like a long shot if another war broke out. Selling it to the United States offered cash, reduced a strategic liability, and kept the territory out of British hands.
That British angle matters. Alaska sat across from Canada, and Canada was still under British influence. Russian officials worried that if war came, Britain might simply take Alaska. So even though the price seems tiny now, Russia saw the sale as a practical move. They were converting a faraway asset into money and avoiding the risk of losing it for nothing.
Meanwhile, William Seward saw an opportunity. He was a committed expansionist, and he believed the United States should grow across the continent. Seward had already supported American expansion in other directions, and Alaska fit his broader view that the US should secure strategic ports, trading routes, and influence in the Pacific North.
And this was only 2 years after the Civil War ended, so the country was still recovering. That makes the purchase even more interesting. It wasn't just a peacetime land grab in a stable era. The federal government was rebuilding, the nation was redefining itself, and yet Seward was pushing a bold foreign policy move at the same time.
The negotiations were handled by the US Minister to Russia, Edwin de Stuckel, and they moved quickly in March 1867. The agreed price was $7.2 million, which worked out to roughly 2 cents an acre for Alaska's 586,000 plus square miles. That number is famous for a reason. It sounds absurdly low now. But the real question is not just the price. It's what anyone thought the land was good for in 1867.
And the answer, honestly, was not much in the popular imagination. The most visible industries at the time were fur hunting and some fishing. Large-scale gold discoveries came later. Oil, which would eventually transform Alaska's economy, was far beyond the horizon. So critics looked at a harsh climate and a distant territory and wondered why the United States had just paid for a giant freezer.
The Senate approved the treaty on April 9, 1867, and the formal transfer took place later that year on October 18th in Sitka, which had been the Russian colonial capital. That date is still celebrated in Alaska as Alaska Day. The transfer ceremony marked not just a change in flags, but a major shift in sovereignty for the entire region.
There's something striking about how quiet the early American reaction was. This was not a moment of mass national celebration. In fact, much of the press mocked the purchase. Some newspapers treated it as a vanity project, others as a pointless expenditure. And because Alaska was so far away from the continental United States, it was easy for people to dismiss it as irrelevant.
But the place itself was not empty, of course. Alaska had long been home to Indigenous peoples, including the Tlingit, Haida, Aleut, Inupiat, Yupik, Athabaskan, and many others. From their perspective, the sale was a transfer between empires, not a surrender of their homelands. That distinction is crucial. The Alaska Purchase did not erase native presence or native sovereignty in any simple way.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons we have to be careful when we say the United States bought Alaska. It bought Russian claims to the territory, but that did not mean the land was somehow uninhabited or that everyone living there agreed to the transfer. Indigenous communities had their own systems, histories, trade networks, and relationships with the land long before 1867.
And the American period brought major changes, often disruptive ones. US rule expanded mining, commercial fishing, missionary activity, and later military presence. The federal government's approach to Alaska reflected broader American frontier policies, which often meant asserting control first and figuring out the consequences later. In Alaska, those consequences were especially far-reaching because of the distance and the region's cultural diversity.
The funny thing is, even the nickname Seward's Folly shows how badly the purchase was initially understood. It suggests Seward had bought a waste of money. But frontier history is full of cases where land looked useless until new technology, new markets, or new geopolitical realities made it valuable. Alaska became a classic example of that pattern.
One of the first big economic shifts came with the Klondike Gold Rush in the 1890s, which turned Alaska into a gateway for prospectors. The gold rush didn't mean Alaska had suddenly become easy to develop, but it did prove the region had value beyond fur trading. Then came broader commercial fishing, mining, and eventually massive oil discoveries at Prudhoe Bay in the 20th century.
Strategically, Alaska also became much more important over time. Its location makes it a key link between North America and Asia, and its northern position gives the United States a major foothold in the Arctic. In the 19th century, that was harder for people to imagine. In the 20th century, with modern naval warfare and air power, it became obvious.
That strategic logic was especially clear during World War II and the Cold War. Alaska's geography made it essential for defense, especially as tensions with Japan and later the Soviet Union changed the way Americans thought about the far north. In hindsight, the purchase looks less like a curiosity and more like a major national security decision.
And Alaska eventually became a state in 1959, which is another key part of the story. It took nearly a century from purchase to statehood. That long timeline shows that territorial expansion did not automatically mean rapid political integration. Alaska had to be governed, developed, and connected to the rest of the country over generations.
It also had to be mapped, surveyed, and administratively organized. Much of Alaska remained remote even by American frontier standards. Harsh winters, mountain ranges, glaciers, enormous distances, and sparse infrastructure all shaped life there. So the northern frontier was never just a line on a map. It was and is a lived reality shaped by climate, logistics, and resilience.
I think one reason this story still resonates is that it combines several big historical themes in one package: imperial rivalry, economic uncertainty, national ambition, and the transformation of a landscape that many people misunderstood. It's a land deal, sure, but it's also a story about how nations imagine the future.
And about how they often get the future wrong at first. In 1867, many people could not see Alaska's strategic or economic significance. That doesn't mean they were foolish. It means they were working with the information and technologies of their time. The purchase only looks inevitable when you know what came later.
Still, the price tag has helped make the story immortal. $7.2 million is such a tidy number, and it's become almost mythic in American memory. People love to compare it to what Alaska eventually yielded in natural resources and strategic value. But the deeper lesson is not just that the land was cheap, it's that value changes with context.
That's a great way to put it. Value is historical, not fixed. In 1867, Russia wanted out, the United States wanted in, and Indigenous peoples were left to navigate a new imperial order. The Alaska Purchase was not just about acreage. It was about power, timing, and the reshaping of a northern frontier that would matter far more than most people expected.
So if you hear someone call it Seward's Folly, remember that it was only folly if you stopped the story in 1867. If you follow the story forward, it becomes one of the most consequential land purchases in American history.
And it's a reminder that frontiers are not just discovered, they are negotiated, contested, inhabited, and remade. Alaska's story after 1867 is still being written, but the purchase itself set the stage for everything that followed.
And now a word from our sponsor, Fyrebox. That's F-Y-R-E-B-O-X. The easiest way to create quizzes that grow your audience. Whether you're a marketer chasing leads, a teacher building assessments, or a creator who wants more engaged subscribers, Fyrebox lets you launch a conversion-ready quiz in minutes. No code, no designers, no waiting. Try it free at fyrebox.com. Welcome back. You just heard the story. Now, let's see what's stuck. Coming up, a few quick questions straight from what we just covered. 4 options each. I'll give you a few seconds to think before each answer. Ready? Here we go. Question 1. How much did the United States pay Russia for Alaska in 1867? A. $720,000. B. $7.2 million. C. $72 million. D. $2.7 billion. The correct answer is B. $7.2 million. Question 2. What nickname did critics use for the Alaska Purchase? A. Seward's Folly. B. Monroe's March. C. The Great Northwest Deal. D. Russia's Retreat. The correct answer is A. Seward's Folly. Question 3. Who negotiated the Alaska Purchase for the United States? A. Edwin de Stuckel. B. William H. Seward. C. Ulysses S. Grant. D. William McKinley. The correct answer is B. William H. Seward. Question 4. On what date did the formal transfer of Alaska from Russia to the United States take place? A. April 9, 1867. B. March 18, 1867. C. October 18, 1867. D. July 4, 1867. The correct answer is C, October 18, 1867. Question 5. Which of the following was mentioned in the script as a later reason Alaska became more valuable? A. The Klondike Gold Rush, B. The California Gold Rush, C. The Erie Canal, D. The Dust Bowl. The correct answer is A. The Klondike Gold Rush. That's a wrap on this one. Thanks for sticking with us all the way through, quiz and all. If you liked it, hit subscribe so the next episode lands automatically. I'm Cyril, this was The Quiz Fix, and we'll be back soon with another true story worth knowing.